In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, August 19th, here in South Korea. South Korea and the US have begun their annual military drill today to strengthen their defense posture against North Korea's provocations ranging from ballistic missile testing to GPS jamming to cyber attacks. Meanwhile, Seoul, Washington and Tokyo mark their first anniversary of the Camp David summit this past Sunday. That is August 18th, amid prospects of changes in leadership in the US and in neighboring Japan. And in the US, the Democratic Party's national convention kicks off in Chicago on this Monday for 4 days, during which a ceremonial vote will be held to nominate Vice President Kamala Harris for the country's November presidential race. Military officials from Seoul and Washington have kicked off their annual summer training, which will last until August 29th and seek to strengthen their defense posture against Pyongyang's provocations. Our correspondent Peunji has details.
A major combined military exercise between Seoul and Washington officially kicked off on Monday. The 11-day Ulji Freedom Shield exercise that's set to take place in South Korea until next Thursday includes computer-based simulation and combined field training exercises, focusing on bolstering the Allies' defense posture against threats from Pyongyang. It also includes civil defense drills involving government agencies with exercises that simulate a nuclear attack from North Korea for the first time this year. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff also said this year's exercise will involve some 19,000 South Korean troops and that it plans to carry out more combined field training. There will be a total of 48 outdoor drills, which is 10 more than last year, including field maneuvers and live-fire exercises. The military also said the exercise will further strengthen the Allies' capability and readiness to defend against North Korea's weapons of mass destruction by utilizing a variety of assets on land, at sea, in the air, as well as in cyberspace. Meanwhile, military officials from Seoul and Washington are watching closely for a potential provocation from North Korea, as Pyongyang has been strongly criticizing the large-scale military exercises, calling them a rehearsal for an invasion. Peunji, Arirang News.
In related news, President Yoon Suk-yeol, for his part, has highlighted the importance of the annual Ulji Freedom Shield, pointing to the presence of forces working secretly within society to endanger democracy. To take a listen.
먼저 허위 정보와 가짜 뉴스 유포, 사이버 공격과 같은 북한의 회색지대 도발에 대한 대응 태세를 강화해야 합니다. 우리 사회 내부에는 자유민주주의 체제를 위협하는 반국가 세력들이 곳곳에서 암약하고 있습니다.
Speaking at a cabinet meeting earlier on this Monday, President Yoon added these forces seek to fuel division and confusion. He also warned of possible war and called on members of the public to abide by government calls, that is, for caution during the 11-day military exercise. On the social front, the President made note of the start of the second school semester and the expanded operation of Nilbom School, a public after-school program in support of working parents. Meanwhile, on the sports front, President Yoon praised yet again Team Korea's performance at the Paris Olympics, while sharing hopes for great games by the country's team to the Paralympics starting next Wednesday. The Trilateral summit among South Korea, the US and Japan at Camp David last year saw the three countries sharing their commitment to consult with each other on a wide array of matters through an annual leaders meeting, as well as that of separate trilateral diplomatic, defense and economic officials. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
The leaders of South Korea, the United States and Japan reaffirmed their resolve to tackling North Korea's nuclear threat and other regional and global challenges as they seek to preserve commitments made at their Camp David summit last year. In a joint statement to mark 1 year since their first ever standalone trilateral meeting, President Yoon Suk-yeol, US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on Sunday said they remain inspired by the spirit of Camp David and the Camp David principles as a roadmap for cooperation, as well as the commitment to consult on threats and challenges to their collective interests and security.
Previously limited to traditional security areas, the scope of trilateral cooperation has become comprehensive to include economic security, advanced technology, cybersecurity, development, and human exchanges.
According to Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-ho, major achievements include a real-time system for sharing North Korean missile warning information, the first ever multi-domain Freedom Edge exercise between their militaries, and the establishment of a trilateral security cooperation framework. The three countries have also been making progress on economic security dialogue, early warning systems to stabilize supply chains, space security dialogue, quantum research, and youth exchanges. The most significant outcome of the Camp David summit has been to set in stone that trilateral cooperation by establishing annual meetings between leaders, national security advisors, and ministers of foreign affairs, defense, and trade. Such efforts to institutionalize the Camp David framework are becoming all the more important, as Japan and the US will have new leaders take office in the coming months.
This trilateral cooperation was attainable under the top-down approach, which was initiated by three leaders. In this sense, if domestic politics are changed, this architecture might be affected. In short, this type of top-down approach is rarely expected any longer if three leaders are gone or become weaker in their political power. In this vein, a key question should be whether a bottom-up approach can function as an alternative to a top-down approach in the era of post-three leaders.
A senior Korean official on Sunday said Washington and Tokyo value the importance of the South Korea-US alliance and South Korea-Japan relations, as well as the significance of Camp David, indicating that their support for the Camp David mechanism remains sturdy, regardless of political changes. Still, the official acknowledged the need to create the institutional infrastructure to ensure the three-way partnership is stable in the mid to long term, adding that the three governments are sharing their views on launching a trilateral cooperation secretariat. While discussions on holding a leaders' summit are in the early stages, the annual gathering is likely to take place on the sidelines of a multilateral conference later this year. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And in the U.S., the latest public poll shows Vice President Kamala Harris running ahead of her rival Donald Trump as her party's national convention is set to start later today. Our Lee Jae-myung has more.
Just a day before the Democratic Party's national convention kicks off in Chicago on Monday, another nationwide poll on the upcoming U.S. presidential election shows Vice President Kamala Harris leading former President Donald Trump. In the poll conducted jointly by Washington Post, ABC, and Ipsos on 2,335 adults nationwide from August 9th to the 13th and released on Sunday, the Harris-Walz camp leads the Trump-Vance camp 49% to 45% among registered voters, while the vice president has a 51% to 45% lead over Trump among likely voters. However, the latest poll shows that Trump leads Harris when it comes to some key issues in the United States. Respondents believe that Trump would do a better job in dealing with issues like the economy, inflation, immigration, and the prolonged conflict in the Middle East. When it comes to other issues like healthcare, abortion, and race relations, Harris has a double-digit lead over Trump. The latest poll also shows that Harris is enjoying growing support from swing voters. While Trump previously had a 4 percentage point lead over Joe Biden from independents in July, Sunday's poll showed that Harris has an 11 percentage point lead over Trump. Considered the classic swing voters, independents have gone with the winner in 9 of the last 12 presidential elections. Harris has seen slight leads over Trump in a number of other nationwide polls, but many pundits believe it's still too close to predict the outcome of November's election. While Harris officially won the Democratic presidential nomination in an online vote 2 weeks ago, she will accept the party's nomination and give her acceptance speech on Thursday, the last day of the 4-day national convention. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Also on the international front, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel to promote efforts to ease tensions in the Middle East. Our Yoon has the latest.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in the Israeli capital of Tel Aviv on Sunday with hopes of securing a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal. But just hours after landing, Hamas raised doubts over an agreement being reached. After 2 days of talks in Doha last week, the mediating countries, Qatar, the United States, and Egypt, delivered the latest proposal to Hamas. The Palestinian group's response on Sunday was that the proposal was aligned with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent positions, saying that he refuses to end the war and withdraw Israeli forces from Gaza, including along the border with Egypt. Hamas reiterated that these were two conditions the group sees as the basis for any agreement, and said Netanyahu is responsible for thwarting the efforts of mediators by delaying the reaching of an agreement. Meanwhile, Netanyahu insists that pressure should be put on Hamas and not Israel, adding that the militant group did not send a delegation for ceasefire talks. Blinken is set to meet senior Israeli leaders, including the Prime Minister, on Monday. And following his meetings in Israel, Blinken will move on to Cairo for further talks in an effort to close the gap between Israel and Hamas to reach an agreement. Meanwhile, violence continued in Gaza on Sunday. Palestinian health authorities said Israeli airstrikes killed at least 21 people in Gaza, including 6 children. Yoon, Arirang News.
Lee Jae-myung is retaking the reins of the opposition Democratic Party of Korea, having garnered a remarkable majority of the votes cast. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
At its national convention on Sunday at the K-SPO Dome in Songpa-gu district of southeastern Seoul, the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea announced its new leadership. Lee Jae-myung secured his second term with a landslide victory, winning 85.4% of the vote and beating 2 other candidates. He broke his own record set 2 years ago for the highest vote share ever for a DP leader and became the first leader in 24 years to serve 2 consecutive terms. The results were based on votes from dues-paying party members, which accounted for 56%, 14% from party delegates, and the remaining 30% coming from public opinion polls. In his acceptance speech, Lee emphasized the importance of improving people's livelihoods.
We will become a more competent party dedicated to improving people's livelihoods. Let's unite the wisdom and strength of our members and the public to build a better and new South Korea.
He also offered to meet with President Yoon to discuss pending state affairs. And during the national convention, 5 Supreme Council members, Kim Min-seok, Chun Hyun-hee, Han Jun-ho, Kim Byung-ju, and Lee Yeon-ju were also elected. They are considered hardline supporters of Lee Jae-myung, creating a leadership that is strongly aligned with him. Although Lee Jae-myung's second term has begun, his legal challenges are expected to remain significant variables as he currently faces several court battles. These include corruption charges related to property development projects during his time as mayor of Seongnam City, as well as allegations of his involvement in illegal money transfers to North Korea. His first court verdict on election law violation charges is expected in October.
With Lee now chosen as the new leader, he's expected to focus on both improving people's livelihoods and taking a strong stance against the government as key elections lie ahead, including the presidential election in 2027. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
In other news, KTX services have resumed between Daegu and Gyeongju following a derailment this past weekend. According to National Railroad Operator Korail, train services are back on track as of this Monday. On Sunday at 4:38 p.m., a KTX Sancheon train headed for Busan from Seoul derailed when one of its wheels went off the tracks near Komo Station in Daegu. All 384 passengers were safely transferred onto a new train and no injuries were reported. Korea's baseball league set a new single-season attendance record this past weekend. According to the Korea Baseball Organization, on Sunday alone, over 91,000 spectators gathered across 5 stadiums nationwide. The latest number has raised this season's total attendance to almost 8.5 million, the highest ever. In fact, pundits predict this season may see spectators surging past 10 million for the first time. Out of the season's 720 games, 573 matches have been played and 147 remain. Up next, we shed light on an annual festival in the southern coastal city of Tongyeong that seeks to pay tribute to a hero whose naval strategy during the Battle of Hansan Island served to change the course of war between Korea and Japanese invaders in the late 16th century. Our An Seon-jing takes a trip into history.
1592, Japan's Hideyoshi regime invaded the Korean peninsula. It took just 20 days for Japan to capture the Joseon capital, Hanyang. But one battle changed the course of the war. That battle was won by Korea's greatest naval leader, Admiral Lee Jae-myung. The narrow waters below me is where Admiral Lee Jae-myung achieved his famous maritime victory using the islands and bays of Korea's southern coastline to his advantage. The Battle of Hansan Island was crucial in bringing back the momentum for Korea. And to honor this, every year, the south coast city of Tongyeong hosts the Hansan Battle Festival.
This festival is not about eating, drinking, and merely having fun. It inherits the spirit of Admiral Lee, which was about being loyal to the country, loving his people, and being loyal to one's parents. This festival should be known beyond our country.
This year is the 63rd festival. The 6-day festival covers as much of the city as it can, hosting events by the port, in the city, and in other areas.
And I really like Korean traditions, and I also wanted to learn more about the history. I knew about Isun-shin General, but I did not know about this battle, so I also got to learn and to enjoy the tradition, so that's why I came.
The highlight is a historical reenactment of the Battle of Hansan Island.
조선의 수군들이야! 죽기를 각오하면 반드시 살 것이오. 살기를 동하면 패전하여 반드시 죽을 것이다.
Among the ships is the well-known Gobukseon, or turtle ship. A warship used by the Korean Navy, its name derives from its metal covering, which resembles a turtle shell. These ships, alongside Panokseon warships, were used in South Korea's strategic attacks to destroy the Japanese fleets. When the Japanese Navy arrived, Admiral Lee Jae-myung ordered the Korean Navy to spread its ships into a crane wing shape known as hagikjin. Despite Korea having fewer ships, it destroyed many Japanese ships and cut off Japan's supply of food and weapons. The Joseon Naval Headquarters that Admiral Lee commanded was first established on Hansan-do Island and later on moved to Tongyeong.
Tongyeong as a whole used to be the headquarters itself. There was no war as devastating as the Imjin War. We were able to win because Admiral Lee put his life out there. The war was on the sea, and we had both the Gobukseon and Panokseon warships.
Saebyongwan Hall, which is the main building and the only building remaining after the annexation by Japan, literally translates to Hall of Washing Weapons, which showed hope that the war would end soon and peace would prosper. The city of Tongyeong is famous for its beautiful coastal surroundings. But what makes it really special is the culture and history, especially the great victory that became a foundation for Korea today. An Seong-jin, Arirang News, Tongyeong.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Ukraine continues its incursion into Russia's Kursk region, with a Ukrainian Air Force commander saying that it had destroyed a second strategic Russian bridge in a week. Ukraine's military on Sunday released aerial footage of the strike on a bridge reportedly over the same river in Zvanoye, the second bridge in the same region to be destroyed after another strategic bridge on Friday. Ukrainian Air Force commander Mykola Oleshchuk said that the aerial strikes will deprive the enemy of logistical capabilities, which significantly affects the course of hostilities. Ukraine is nearly 2 weeks into the biggest incursion into Russian territory seen since the Second World War. Kyiv says it has seized over 80 settlements across more than 1,000 square kilometers in the Kursk region since its surprise attack on August 6th. The Kremlin has vowed to retaliate, calling the Ukrainian incursion into Russian territory a major provocation. Thailand's new Prime Minister, Paetongtarn Shinawatra, was endorsed by the country's king on Sunday, officially confirming her new position 2 days after Parliament voted in her favour. 37-year-old Paetongtarn was approved by Thailand's king Maha Wajiralongkorn in a formal ceremony in Bangkok after winning nearly 2/3 of the vote in the House of Representatives on Friday. The daughter of divisive former Prime Minister and billionaire Thaksin Shinawatra, she became the youngest Prime Minister of Thailand only days after her predecessor was dismissed by the Constitutional Court. On Saturday, the new PM's father was granted an amnesty by the king from serving the remainder of an 8-year sentence for graft and abuse of power. Paetongtarn is the third member of her family to serve as a prime minister after her father and aunt. Large protests in India over a trainee doctor's rape and murder continued on Sunday despite the Indian Medical Association calling for an end to the strikes. Indian junior doctors marched on the streets of Kolkata with thousands of people who came out in solidarity on Sunday evening, chanting, "We want justice." A day before, on Saturday, a 24-hour strike organized by the Indian Medical Association had more than 1 million people expected to join, forcing hospitals and clinics across the country to turn away non-emergency patients. The Indian Medical Association described the rape and murder of 31-year-old female junior doctor around 10 days ago a crime of barbaric scale due to the lack of safe spaces for women, telling the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a letter that as 60% of India's doctors are women, safety and security measures are required to ensure the safety of their staff. Famed French actor Alain Delon, once described as the most beautiful man in cinema, died on Sunday, aged 88. He had reportedly been suffering poor health since a stroke in 2019, rarely leaving his estate in France's Val-de-Loire region. With his striking blue eyes, Delon was known for his on-screen tough guy persona in hits including Borsalino and The Samurai. French President Emmanuel Macron paid tribute to Delon on Sunday, saying the actor had made the world dream, while actress Brigitte Bardot said Delon's death left a huge void. Born just outside of Paris on November 8, 1935, Delon made almost 90 films during his career. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The extreme heat is showing no sign of easing up with a record-breaking stretch of consecutive tropical nights. Heat continues today with passing rain in the forecast for southern provinces and Gangwon-do. The 9th typhoon of the season, however, Jongdari, has developed southwest of Japan's Okinawa, and as the typhoon develops further and moves northwards, it will drop heavy rainfall to southern parts of Korea from tomorrow. And into Wednesday, the south coast and Jeju could see more than 100 millimeters of downpours. And for now, rain is forecast to lash down tomorrow night. So those near the water enjoying a late summer vacation need to stay on high alert. Meanwhile, highs in most parts should hover around 35 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Now, the much-awaited Cheoseol, the second autumn season term, is this Thursday. But searing heat continues to bake much of Korea, at least through next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, and today we address the latest events here on the Korean Peninsula.